Hello, my fellow fountain pen enthusiasts. So I've got another pen news video, and it's been a while. I know it's been a while, and I do apologize. This is my second time to shoot this video. I had some issues with some of the information on the first video. Part of it was some of the pens sold out, and before I had a chance to post the video, and so I thought, okay, I'll just edit this stuff out. And I was like, no, it's gonna mess up the flow. So I've made the decision to reshoot the whole video and go through some of the stuff again. Now I have about 7 different pens to talk about. Some newer, one that hasn't technically been released, at least not to us Westerners. And then I'm gonna save one for the very end, and I'll have maybe a topic, or I don't want to say a rant, but a topic at the end of the video. So that way, for those of you that don't want to hear about that, can end the video at that point. So with that being said, let's get the video started. All right, so we're gonna jump into our first pen. And that is actually a Moonman fountain pen, and that's the Moonman T1 fountain pen. So again, this is not a brand new pen. It wasn't just recently released. It's been out for a little bit now. But I think it's a cool pen. I've got our first image up. As you can tell, it has 4 different colors, and it's a piston filler. So no cartridge converter, nothing like that. So it's a nice piston filler fountain pen. Now this pen is available through a multitude of different sellers. You can find it on Etsy, you can find it on eBay. eBay seems to be one of the primary places that I would check. As far as pricing for it, it's a pen that you can get for around $20. I've seen it as high as $25, and in some cases I've seen it below $20. So again, just shop around, see what works best for you. Now, as far as the overall size of the pen, its capped length is 138 millimeters. The diameter of the pen is 13 millimeters, and the weight is 26 grams. What adds some of that additional weight? Obviously, you can tell that the cap and the turn knob for the piston is going to be that aluminum metal material. I'm going to move on to image number 2. Here we see the red color, very nice, attractive material. And obviously we can tell that this section, again, is made out of that same aluminum material. Now, one thing it reminds me of is very reminiscent of the PenBBS 323 with the aluminum, the aluminum actual pen. I own one of those, and definitely, from a weight perspective, definitely a heavier pen. Now, one cool thing is you're going to get Moonman's proprietary nib with this pen. So I haven't written with a Moonman nib that was completely disappointing. So obviously you'll get that plastic feed as well. It definitely looks like a number 6 size nib, so a nice size nib. No Schmidt nib, which is nice in my opinion. So again, I think a really cool pen. Moving on to one last image, so really the last image that I have of this pen, we see now the teal color. So of course, there's 4 different colors. There's a blue one, there's this teal color, there's the red or kind of a rose color, and then the gray one as well. All very attractive colors. I think a nice touch keeping the barrel that clear acrylic or plastic. Obviously, it will probably help a lot with weight as well. One thing I would say that would be kind of cool and probably make this pen even more appealing to me is if they were able to keep the pen pretty much predominantly metal on the outside, and then encase that plastic barrel with the aluminum and just have like an ink window. I think personally that'd be really cool to have a piston filler similar to that of like a 323, but in a piston filler type pen. I just think it would be nice. And then knowing the price point, if you could keep that price point under $30, it'd be kind of neat. This pen doesn't scream to me personally, but I definitely think it has its place. Again, you can't go wrong with that nib. The section, if it's anything like the 323 I have, shouldn't be too slippery or uncomfortable. I just don't find myself gravitating towards that type of material as often. All right, so moving on to pen number 2 now. We're going to stick with Moonman actually, and we're going to go to the Moonman M8. Now again, this is not a brand new fountain pen, and a lot of these have sold out already. They've sold like crazy. I already have I already have an M8. I actually had to order it twice, which is pretty frustrating. First time I ordered it, seller sent me the wrong thing, so I had to order it again. Luckily, they had not sold out. I wanted the gold one. I'd gone back and forth between the gold and was it the mother of pearl or the mixed colored one, and I couldn't decide which one, so I decided on the gold. I ordered that one. I've had the pen now for about a week. With the sake of giving too much away, I have been using the pen a lot. I of course will do a standalone review for it. But the reason why I want to talk about this pen is not really to just talk about the pen itself, but even though most of these are sold out, I don't think there's very few, if any, right now left on eBay. Easy Buy on their Etsy store has both the gold and the silver available for purchase right now. They don't have that many quantities left, so I'm going to try and get this video up as soon as possible. I'm going to go and move on to image number 2. Now here is that, I think, really gorgeous mother of pearl or mixed colored pen. They have a waiting list for this one, so you can purchase the pen, be on a waiting list. So this pen will be restocked, this specific color. Personally, I think it would be, I've contemplated going on to the waiting list and purchasing this pen. Now, through their site, it's $37.99 for the pen, which I know is a little bit more. I actually paid less for mine. And then if you want to get it with a box, they always do it that way, at least Easy Buy does. I'm sure it probably impacts shipping and everything as far as charges go. You can get it with the box, and that's going to be about $40. So it depends upon how much you really want. I know this pen, specific one, has been pretty popular. So I guess it really depends upon how much you want that color. If you use your PayPal account, if you have a PayPal account, if you have any issues, you can always get your money back, obviously. I will say I've bought several pens from Easy Buy and have never once had an issue, not be it as far as quality of the pen, as far as, get it coming to me damaged or messed up, and or shipping issues, as far as it not showing up on time, relative time, I should say, or just not getting the right item. I've had issues with other sellers trying to save money, essentially, and I've sometimes gotten kind of jerked around a little bit when it comes to that. Now, moving on to another image, we're just going to go through a few more images just to kind of show the pen in its uncapped form. For those of you that maybe have not seen this pen yet, if you haven't, I'm sorry. Obviously, you get a proprietary Moonman nib. This pen is very reminiscent of the Moonman M6. Its wooden counterpart is what I would call it. And in fact, when I first saw this pen, that was the first thing that screamed to me. And I thought, okay, it's a wooden pen, just with a different finish. But in actuality, it's not. Section is very similar. Just all of those type of things. But I will say, if you weren't a big fan of the Moonman M6 for whatever reason, whether it be the nib, the section, the pen overall, I will say this one, even though overall ergonomics are somewhat similar, it just feels different in the hand. I think it's just the material and everything put together. To me, it's just a little bit better writing instrument. And again, that's just trying not to give too much away for the review. Moving on to another image, you get that clip up close and personal. If you have the M6 pen, it's very similar. Nice and springy. It works well. I have put it in and out of a shirt pocket already before without any issues. And then again, image number 5, we see that gold one. That's the one that I ordered. I think it's a beautiful material. And then lastly, we see the silver one. So if you're into the silver, there, I think is more of the silver left. It seems to be the least popular out of the 3 colors. So if you do like that one, you should still be able to get that one available, or that one should still be available. All right, so we're going to move on now to our next fountain pen, and we're going to jump on PenBBS's bandwagon and take a look at the PenBBS 500. Again, not an extremely, well, I would say it's actually a pretty new pen. Very interesting pen, and PenBBS, again, kind of pushing the envelope, doing something different, which makes them, I think, definitely the most exciting company to purchase pens from, at least from the Chinese perspective. So PenBBS 500, this pen's available in multiple colors, and it seems like they keep just releasing more colors, which I think is also really cool. So you got a lot of acrylic options with this pen. It retails for around $35 to $40. There are, of course, you can go to PenBBS official store, which I think is the best place, especially if you're planning on buying more than one pen potentially. You're going to pay money for shipping, so always add that onto the purchase, but you can usually combine those products, or you can combine those products for shipping. But there are sellers available on eBay as well as other places also. So again, available through Etsy and eBay. Dimensions for this pen. So dimensions wise, about 140 millimeters capped. The diameter is 15 millimeters. That's for the cap, I'm sorry. And then the barrel is 13.5 millimeters. So decent width as far as the pen goes. Doesn't have a weight listed. I imagine this pen to be a little bit heftier because of that filling system, which again is somewhat unique. So moving on to image number 2, we actually see, again, just a good representation of some of the colors that are going to be available to you. Image number 3, again, just more colors of this pen. But the image I want to focus on is image number 4, which I'm going to pop up now. So this one, we can see the filling system. And this filling system, the first thing I thought of when I first saw it, I saw it on Instagram, was TWSBI Go. That was the first thing I thought. I saw the spring and the little rod, and I thought, okay, it's like a TWSBI Go type piston. In actuality, it's more probably closely related to that of a PenBBS 355, the bulk filler, in the sense that rod, you actually pull it up to engage the piston. So you actually have to turn it to engage the piston in order to then get the piston to work appropriately. So again, interesting design. I would say, again, somewhat similar to a combination of the 355, a regular piston filler, and maybe just a little bit of the TWSBI Go. This will definitely be probably my next pen that I personally purchase. I really like the corduroy that we see here, that darker colored acrylic. I don't own a PenBBS pen in that color. I keep saying I'm going to get one. I think this might just be the one that I get. Now, I would say, because of the way that you have to engage this piston, so I'm going to move on to image number 5. And here we see some of the darker acrylics that are available. So we see I think it's the Galaxy that's up above, and then a nice purple acrylic. I don't remember all the colors like some people do. But I would imagine with the fact that you have to engage that piston by turning that knob, that it might be a little bit difficult to use this pen in some of the darker acrylics as far as filling it. So that's why for me, I think having an acrylic or a material that has more transparent qualities would be a lot easier to actually physically use the pen to fill it. So some people may argue it's a little bit of a gimmicky design, similar to that of the 355. I think it's cool. I think it's neat. I think it's, again, just offering something different. You have the option of PenBBS's beautiful acrylic resins. And then on top of that, you've got a new filling system to kind of just mess around and play with, so to speak. Moving on to image number 6. This just kind of shows the pens, or the pen, and kind of how to use it. Instructions that you would obviously receive with the pen. So it shows that actual piston, how you turn it to engage it, and then really just kind of showing the motion in which you fill the pen, which it's a piston filler. So I think most of us understand how that part works. And then the last image that I have for the 500 is just another marketing image, kind of showing all 4 of those different colors together. Obviously, for me personally, I really like the 2 in the middle. You just can't go wrong with those colors. I know the Galaxy color is another really, really attractive color as well. It would be cool to see this pen offered in some gold trim, or maybe even rose gold. I think in some of those colors would look really awesome. So we'll see if that might be something after this first initial wave or launch, maybe something that we see later on, like we've seen with like the 456. All right, so that takes care of it on PenBBS 500. Again, retails for around $35 to $40. I think it's a really cool pen. It will probably be my next pen purchase that I get. And that may happen in the next day or two. I don't know. All right, so moving on to pen number 4. I'm gonna pop the image up on the screen. And here we see 4 different pens, a nice looking cigar shaped fountain pens. Now you may ask, well, what brand is this? This is the LIY, and that's short for Live in You or Live in You, Resin Fountain Pen. Now, LIY is a brand that's been around now for a little while. The founder of LIY, Eason G, has sold the company. And when LIY first came onto the scene, they were, to me, it was really before like PenBBS took off. Kind of like that premium Chinese pen manufacturer, so to speak. And, well, you know, the reason why I say that is you think of like the LIY Me Too as one of the first pens I remember. That pen sold for around $50 when most other Chinese pens were still in the $20 to $30 range, being at the very like peak of those pens. And at the time because I do own a Me Too, I actually own 3 LIY pens. I thought the price was warranted. I thought, okay, this is a good price. But looking back on it, when you compare that pen to some of the PenBBS models that have come out since then, some of the Moonman models, Wing Sung models, like the 626 even, you realize that price point is definitely inflated. It's the Me Too, as nice of a little pen as it is, it's just not worth that price. And then you have the Future pen. While it's a cool looking cigar shaped pen, again, the acrylic to me is not very robust. And again, if you compare that to some of the other pens, for instance, the Fully 1017, you compare pricing for that, $45 to $50 for the Future and less than $20 for the Fully one, which is an amazing price. It just, to me, doesn't compare. And then the last one was the Shiwu, the LIY Shiwu that I own. That one is an $80 pen, and that's probably the only one that I will say, for me personally, I feel like that pen's worth what I paid for it. Now, some people may argue, and again, it's all dependent upon what you're willing to pay and what you enjoy. Now, since then, all those pens were offered with Schmidt nibs. This pen is no exception. It will have a Schmidt nib. But since then, this pen, we've seen some of LIY's pricing become more competitive. This pen is offered for around $35. So you're going to get a really nice looking acrylic. You can see all 4 different ones. You have kind of to me, a spring acrylic. It kind of has that pinkish shade and green hues on the far left. You've got a galaxy almost look or an ocean look on the navy blue / light blue one. And then you have an autumn looking pen. Kind of looks like autumn leaves to me. And then to me, you have a wintry looking pen on the far right. That would be, kind of that cracked ice look. Now, as far as sizing for this pen, the cap size for this pen is 140 millimeters, and the weight of it is 15 grams. So again, doesn't have much weight to it. I would say from a weight perspective, if you have an LIY Future, it kind of reminds me of that weight, because again, that pen, the acrylic is not very thick. It's a very, very light pen, which is cool of a design as it is. It kind of deters me from using it very often. Here on image number 2, we see our first one uncapped. And this is kind of where it reminds me a lot of the Future as well, where that section, how it tapers down. It does make the section skinnier. We see that Schmidt nib. I don't know if this is a pen. It doesn't have any images of the pen posted, so I don't know if this is a pen that does post. Moving on to image number 3, we see the darker colored one. Again, same section design, same nib. It looks like, more than likely, it looks like a number 5 nib. I didn't see anything in the description that said what size Schmidt nib this is. But it does look like a number 5 size nib. And then we have pick 4 here, and that's the cracked ice version. I think this one is a really attractive looking pen. I would say though, my favorite is going to be this next image, or our last image here, and that's the autumn color. If I was to get this pen, that would be the one that I would definitely get. I do think this pen has its place. I think if it's a cool looking design. It doesn't 100% speak to me from an experience perspective, just from my past. I would think this is a pen that, while the acrylics are very attractive, I don't know if I'd find myself using it very often, would be the only problem. But definitely an attractive pen. I do like the pricing. I think LIY is onto something here. If they continue to do and be competitive with pricing and maybe launch some models, maybe some different styled models with some of these beautiful acrylics, similar to their Mountain series. But a lot of those pens were still priced in like the $60 price point. If they could get that into the $40 price point without sacrificing too much, I think that would be amazing, personally. All right, moving on to our 5th fountain pen, and we have 2 more after that, is going to be another one that's a little bit interesting and may be met with some criticism / controversy from some of you. And that's what the comment section is for. But this is the Resin Go Fountain Pen. And I failed to mention the LIY pen is available on eBay through different sellers, and they all have it priced about the same. I apologize, I forgot to mention that on the LIY, around $35, $35 to $36. So that is available on eBay. Now the Resin Go Fountain Pen, I'm going to pop the first image up here. And for those of you that don't know, this is available through Bobby Pens, his eBay store, which is office_supplies_pen. I'll pop that up on the screen for you. Now, first thing you may think to yourself is, wow, this pen is like the TWSBI Go. Now, honestly, when I first saw this pen, I saw it in its capped form, like the one on the left-hand side, the blue one. I thought this was a PenBBS pen at first, just a different take on that. And then I realized, no, it has like a TWSBI Go filling system. To me, this pen really mimics 3 different kind of pen designs, so to speak. I see PenBBS, I see TWSBI, and I also see Moonman with those red bands. It reminds me of the Moonman M8. That's what it really reminds me of, is really just a combination of 3 different fountain pens. Now, the cool thing about this pen is it retails for $20, so it's not an extremely expensive pen. You'll get a, kind of an interesting idea as far as a filling system goes. You'll probably get a solid ink capacity. I think some attractive acrylics. I think that green acrylic that you see on like the PenBBS, I have that exact same one on my 323. Beautiful acrylic in person. This pen will come with a fine nib. It's about 136 millimeters capped. The diameter is 14 millimeters, so decent width to it, or diameter, I'm sorry. As far as weight, it's not listed for this pen, so I don't know what the weight is. I wouldn't imagine this pen being obviously very heavy. There's not a ton of metal in there. Moving on to image number 2, actually shows the pen mainly, I would say at least mostly disassembled. So you see that we've got our section completely taken out. It looks like we have an O-ring at the end of that section, which is nice. I'll probably seal that up really nice and well. We see the end where our piston is. Again, there's probably a lot of TWSBI fans out there that may, not like the thought and idea of this pen. I was not big on the TWSBI Go. As far as I have 3 different TWSBI pens. I do enjoy them. I will say 2 out of my 3 though have cracked. So really the only one that I have that I really use is my TWSBI Eco. My other 2 both cracked. So this would be a pen that maybe, for those of you that have had issues with TWSBIs in the past, but you were interested in the TWSBI Go, maybe this would be a pen that would be an option for you because you really wanted to try out that filling system. Pick number 3 just shows the pen. This is the image that I saw originally, so of course my first thought was PenBBS. In actuality, obviously I was wrong. And then the last image that I have is of the blue acrylic. I think this one is really attractive and pretty. So again, it costs $20. It's on Bobby Pens eBay store. I definitely think it's worth checking out. Not a pen that just screams to me, but I think for $20, if that's something that is interested, you get a nice looking acrylic. It's kind of unique looking, sort of. It kind of, again, takes elements from several different pens. The filling system from TWSBI, I think, again, those red bands, for whatever reason, they remind me of Moonman. And then the pen overall, when it's capped, it looks like a PenBBS. So that's just kind of my opinion. All right, moving on to our 6th fountain pen here. So we're moving right along. We have the PenBBS 492. And this is an Instagram image that I'm popping up. So this is a rather cool pen that is not yet available to purchase, at least for those of us that live here in America, or really just any of us Westerners, so to speak. I do know it's available in China right now, or at least I'm pretty sure it is. Now, what makes this pen unique? Well, first off, it's a PenBBS pen, which I think is cool. As you can tell in this image, or hopefully you can, it has a rose gold finish, which I think is awesome. But what makes it even more unique is it actually is a magnetic piston. Now, this is not a design necessarily that is unique to just PenBBS. They're not the first ones. They didn't just come up with a magnetic filling piston. Now, you may ask, how does the pen work? There's actually, if you're an Instagram member, you can actually see the pen in action as far as filling up, I think, water. But basically, if you take the cap off the pen, the piston, you can engage it with the cap. So there's going to be a magnet in the bottom of the cap, which probably around the cap band, and then a magnet on top of the piston. And then all you just basically move the piston up and down with the cap. Now, again, I think it's a really cool design. I definitely think I'll probably purchase one when it becomes, I'm going to say when it becomes available. I would imagine the pricing for it not being too crazy. I could see it being, you know, $50 and maybe even just north of $50. But I definitely think it would be worth checking out. Now, for those of you that say, oh my goodness, this could like ruin all my credit cards, or what if I walk past the magnet and this happens? Bear in mind, not the first pen manufacturer or pen maker to make this design. I've seen this on some pen artisans that have made this as a working design as far as a magnetic piston, and I'm no issues that I'm aware of with those pens. I've seen designs for this pen. Someone on Fountain Pen Network had listed some designs that were from the 50s on basically a magnetic piston filling mechanism for a fountain pen. So I definitely think that this would be really cool. Again, if you're someone that's into some of these kind of gimmicky filling systems, if you like teetering, messing with some of this stuff, or just having something unique in your collection, I think this definitely fits that bill. And I love the fact that they went with, at least on this one, they went with a clear acrylic. And I think those rose gold accents, the nib, the cap band, just the whole thing, I think it complements it very well. And it will look unique when you compare it to some of the other PenBBS pens. Not just the filling system alone, but just the overall look of the pen will look really cool. Not to mention, you basically have an eyedropper that's actually a piston filler. I mean, it's going to hold a massive amount of ink. So that's another really cool thing about it. So I think it's a cool pen. That's really all I know about it. I don't really know anything else. Anybody else that knows more about it, please comment down below. If you happen to be someone that's already has one of these pens, please let us know what you think about it, because that would be amazing. Now, before I get to my next pen, I'm going to take a quick drink real quick because my throat is a little bit dry. And we are going to jump into the last pen. Now, this pen is probably going to be met with some criticism in the comment section, and everyone is entitled to their opinion, and that's really why I saved this pen for last, because also I want to know what, if you've made it this far into the video, what your opinions are of this fountain pen, and why or why not do you think it's has its place, so to speak. And if you haven't already guessed, the pen that I'm getting ready to discuss is the Moonman 800, or in some cases M800. I've seen it listed as the Moonman M800, and I've seen it listed as the Moonman 800. So it's one of the two. I know it's an 800, so we'll go with that. Now, before I get into the nitty gritties, this pen retails between $50 and $60, depending upon what seller you buy it from. It is available on eBay and Etsy. Overall dimensions of the pen is 142 millimeters cap, so it's the largest pen out of the list that we have so far today. The diameter of it is 15 millimeters. So again, from a girth perspective, one of the larger pens, and then weight 23.5 grams. So decent weight for this pen. I say about average. Now, the first thing that you're probably thinking to yourself is, am I looking at an image of a Leonardo fountain pen? You actually are not. This is not an Italian fountain pen. This is a Moonman fountain pen. Now, this pen, I've seen a lot of criticism about it. And, you know, I understand. I'm kind of in between that. I'm not going to overly criticize Moonman, and I'm not going to necessarily say that they're 100% within right of producing a fountain pen that mimics that of a pen such as a Leonardo. Now, I know this kind of all started with the Moonman C1. I feel like that was, for me anyways, personally, that was when a lot of people started becoming a little bit critical of Moonman specifically as a company with the C1 and the fact that it looked very similar to that of a Newton Shinobi. And I actually, there was, on the Reddit, one of the fountain pen forums that I'm on Reddit, there was comments about this pen and people, different opinions. Again, some people criticizing it, some people saying, hey, this is, you know, you need to look at it from a different perspective. And Sean Newton actually had an opinion on it. And from his perspective, being a pen manufacturer and a small business owner, he said it was somewhat frustrating that they had copied his Moonman Shinobi. And then you move on to the Moonman C2. That is very similar to that of a Franklin Christoph Pocket 66, I think is the model. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I don't own that specific one, but it's definitely very similar to that of a Franklin Christoph. And then here we are with the Moonman M800. Now, some people, you know, there was actually a video that I was watching on a Leonardo, I think it's Memento. If I said it wrong, I apologize. Grande. So that's their new line that they launched, I think, in September, which is their oversized version of this Leonardo model. And someone actually, so there was a video on it of this Gold Spot pens that I'm subscribed to. There's a video on it, and someone on there had actually commented about how is that pen so much better than that of the Moonman 800 when I could pay $50 for the 800 versus $500 for the Leonardo fountain pen. So, and there was, I mean, I would say not necessarily an argument, but definitely a debate on which one. There's a, you know, it wasn't an extremely long debate, but I think the person brought up good points. And really my perspective of it is number one, it is all dependent upon what you want to spend for a pen. You know, if, you know, first off, Leonardo, the same model that this pen mimics, is going to cost you about $170, give or take. So now, if you want to spend that much money on a pen and you have that much money, then by all means, spend that money. I'm sure from a quality perspective, the acrylic or resin is probably going to be more robust. It's going to be thicker. Quality controls definitely, I would imagine, is going to be different. Obviously, if there's issues with the pen, you're going to have a warranty and they're going to stand behind that warranty. Versus if you spend $50 on one of these pens and there's issues with it, you may get a seller that will work with you and you may have issues from that perspective. But again, it's all about what you want to spend and what you feel is worth it. My whole take on it is this is one of my issues sometimes with fountain pens in general. You know, if I'm going to spend $170 on a fountain pen that I'm going to get a steel nib for, and this is just my opinion, why would I not just go buy a Pilot fountain pen, get a nice soft fine or soft medium, 14 karat gold nib, and in some cases spend less I could get a custom 74 for less than $170. I could get a Sailor Pro Gear for around that price, maybe secondhand, but I'm going to get potentially a 21 karat gold nib, which is actually how I have my Pro Gear now. So again, you know, for me, $170, that's one of my issues with some of the, and I'm not trying to knock any of them, but some of my issues with some of the German and Italian pen manufacturers, and why I don't really own any of those pens is just because I don't really want to spend $500 on a pen that has a gold nib when I could buy a pen for probably $280 that has a really nice gold nib. And now I'm speaking to that on my Pilot Custom 823. And this isn't a debate between Pilot and Leonardo and Pelican fountain pens or Mont Blanc or any of that. Again, it's all about what you're willing to spend. But what I will say is I will probably buy one of these Moonman pens. I will be one of the people that will fork over my $50 to $60 for one of these pens to test it out. I did want to mention that this pen, move on to image number 2, it comes with a box steel nib. So I first off, I think it's so much better. If you're going to use German nibs, go with Bock, go with Jowo. So I really like the fact, you know, for the longest time, we were hearing that LIY was going to offer their pens with Bock nibs. And of course, that never happened. Who knows what happened to all those Bock nibs that Mr. G purchased. But I like the fact that this pen is being offered with a Bock nib. Obviously, it would have been a lot better, in my opinion, if they would have offered it with a Moonman nib, but I get what they're doing here. But it would have been cool if they would have offered it with a Moonman nib. It probably would have drove the price down a little bit too. But I have no issue with the Bock nib. I think it's nice. Obviously, it's got to be a fine nib. So you're not going to get that option like you would with a Leonardo. That's another thing. You get an option of picking different nib sizes. But when you get up into that price point, you should have that option. If you're paying over $100 for a fountain pen, you should be able to pick which nib size you want. It should be extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and maybe 1 or 2 stub options as well. But I have no issue with what Moonman is doing here. I understand if other people do. Now, you could also be that person that really is interested in a Leonardo fountain pen, but just does not have the money for that pen, but you want to experience something to see if this is a pen that you may want to use. This gives you the option of forking over $50, trying out that pen experience, and understanding that it's not going to be the same quality as that other pen, and then saving up your money later on to get that Leonardo if you want to. Now, from the pen manufacturer's perspective, if I was the owner of that business, I probably would be frustrated. So that part I definitely do understand. So again, I'm only looking at it from a consumer's perspective, but I would be frustrated if I was a business owner. I do understand that part, because at the end of the day, it's your livelihood. It's what you rely on as a source of income. And whenever someone is, in your opinion, making a direct copy of your product and selling it at a lesser point or price point, then that definitely would frustrate me. And I do get that. All that being said, I do think it's an attractive pen. I think, you know, here I'm going to pop another image up. We see the green one. And again, here is the blue one. And then we'll do a close-up image of the Bock nib. So there you can kind of see a close-up image of this. So it's a two-tone Bock nib. Again, it's going to be a fine nib if I'm not mistaken. So it's probably going to be one of Bock's nib units. Now the cool thing is you can obviously change out those Bock nibs. You could do a titanium nib. That's another really cool thing to think about as well. So you could put a titanium nib in this pen. And then we see it is a cartridge converter fountain pen. So really, that's all I have for the video, guys. I saved this one for last. Comment down below what your thoughts and opinions are. If you're someone that's super frustrated and you're just like, this is a blatant ripoff, a blatant knockoff, I totally understand. You're entitled to your opinions. Doesn't mean that you and I have to agree with each other. I get it. And if you're not going to buy one of these pens, I totally 100% understand your perspective. That is the reason why we have the ability to have free speech. and have our own opinions. And for me, though, I probably will not buy a Leonardo fountain pen, but I will definitely consider buying this pen. That, again, is just my opinion. Until next time, everyone, please be safe out there. Take care. I will see you later. Bye-bye.